So Kamala Harris is at it again, and Nancy Pelosi. They're both trying to explain what's happening in Ukraine. And guess what? I do a way better job than both of them, and I'm high. So let's watch the vice president, and then we'll watch the Speaker of the House.
If you're watching any level of news, even social media, you're seeing everything that's going on right now in the Ukraine. Break it down in layman's terms for people who don't understand what's going on and how can this directly affect the people of the United States.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So
is she reading a children's book? It sounds like she's reading a children's book. Boy, so she did this on a call, and there's no video of her saying this?
No, there's no video. Basically, that's wrong.
That's a heartbreak. Here we go.
Basically, that's wrong.
Okay, hey. Are you kidding me? Let's play it again.
If you're watching any level of news, even social media, you're seeing everything that's going on right now in the Ukraine. Break it down in layman's terms for people who don't understand what's going on.
So he asked her to break it down for people who don't understand what's going on. He's asking someone else who also doesn't understand what's going on, called Kamala Harris. She's this era's Sarah Palin. Here we go.
And then how can this directly affect the people of the United States?
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade.
Are you talking to people who've never been to Earth? Who are you? So on Earth, there's a country called Russia. It's a big country. It's a powerful country.
The chick that crazy glued her hair could explain it better than Kamala Harris.
Here we go.
A smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
That's it. That's it. I'm gonna hear it one more time.
If you're watching any level of news, even social media, you
I
see
want to
everything
hear
that's
her
going on right
explain
now
it all the way
Ukraine.
through
Break it down
without me
in layman's terms for people
stopping.
who don't understand what's going on and how can this directly affect the
What's
people of the
going on?
United States.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
Wow.
Who did they tell her she was talking to? Like
4-year-olds.
Like, if you were listening to that, you know, that's some kind of hip hop station. So if I was listening to that, I would be like, "Why are you talking to me like this?" Like, I mean, that's stunning. That's beyond stupid. That's how you talk to like TikTok kids, but not even because they sounded smarter on the TikTok.
That's how you would talk to a kindergarten class. That's how you would explain it to a kindergarten class. So here's Nancy Pelosi. She's going to try and explain it. You ready, Kurt? Here we go.
But they know that we can't go there. Putin is trying to bait the trap so that we go in, and that's could be the beginning of World War III. Putin totally irresponsible using weapons that are not allowed under the Geneva Convention. Putin who threatens use of chemical weapons, nuclear and the rest. So they know that we can't, but it's the ask. Now, he was this morning more, if we can't have a no-fly zone, let us have our own, and we need the airplanes to come in.
So is there's some kind of contest?
No. This morning he was less on the ask for the policy, more on let us do it, help us get the planes. But also there is a school of thought that thinks the anti-aircraft missiles and the rest are a very important way. Myself, when I see those tanks, that 40 miles of tanks, I'd like to take out those tanks. I mean, I think that them having more planes might be useful, but that I'm not a military strategist.
I'm just an investor. I say buy Raytheon.
She sounds like she's about to check herself into the Mayberry jail. She said, I'm not a strategist, Andy.
Somebody
She
had
sounds
a Jen
hammered.
Psaki. Yeah, it sounds like somebody had a Jen Psaki margarita to cope with.
Like her and Kamala Harris are having a contest to see who could come off shittier at a press conference. And it's a neck and neck. Here, there's more to this.
We hope that we will be able to get up to a place. I hope. You asked me how. I hope that we can get to a place where the MiGs, which are the kinds of planes they've been trained on, can go to Ukraine.
She talks like I do during my act. I know. That's kind of the MiGs are the kind of.
You know what this reminds me of? The last time you played her with her weird drunk sounds, it reminded me of if my mom was telling me about some news she kind of heard.
Yes.
Which, like, okay, that's my mom who kind of heard some news. This is the Speaker of the House.
16s, especially if we have an excess of them, can backfill for Poland.
Well, now walk away without falling. That's what she had. That's the biggest thing. So let's listen to it again because I think it's.
But they know that we can't go there. Putin is trying to bait the trap so that we go in, and that's the beginning. Could be the beginning of World War III. Putin totally irresponsible using weapons that are not allowed under the Geneva Convention. Putin who threatens use of chemical weapons, nuclear, and the rest. So they know that we can't, but it's the ask. Now, he was this morning more. If we can't have a no-fly zone, let us have our own, and we need the airplanes.
What?
Putin?
I don't know what she means. I think she's saying that if the United States won't do a no-fly zone, that Zelensky was saying, let us have our own and let us get some planes from Poland. I think that's what she's saying.
Okay.
Man.
And then...
Why would we have to let them do that if that's their own defense?
This morning he was less on the...
Because we'd have to coordinate it with Poland to get... Because they're NATO.
Oh, right. I see.
Yeah, we'd have to tell...
Oh, so give us planes, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The ask for the policy, more on let us do it, help us get the planes. But also, there is a school of thought that thinks the anti-aircraft missiles and the rest are a very important way. Myself, when I see those tanks, that 40 miles of tanks, I'd like to take out those tanks. I mean, I think that them having more planes might be useful, but I'm not a military strategist.
I'm just a
we
drinker.
hope that we will be able to get up to a place. I hope. You asked me how. I hope that we can get to a place where the MiGs, which are the kinds of planes they've been trained on, can go to Ukraine. The F-16s, especially if we have an excess of them, can backfill.
Where did you find this?
I don't know. Malcolm sent it to me. Those are the kind of planes. And anyway, where is my brandy sniffer?
It sounds like she should be in like a drunken argument with her husband about their fake son that they made up. And the husband says, "Cat on the hat."
Now, this is on the heels of Kamala Harris also doing this. We played this for you before.
The United States willing to make a specific allocation.
So here's Kamala Harris being asked about refugees from Ukraine, and she decides to start laughing.
For Ukrainian refugees. And for President Duda, I wanted to know if you think, and if you asked the United States to specifically accept more refugees.
Okay. A friend in need is a friend indeed.
Okay, I can first. Okay, so this time.
Clinton laid out just recently really what their aims are. This war machine, this power elite in Washington, is they want to turn Ukraine into another Afghanistan, turn into these killing fields where this long-term insurgency is supported, and they bleed out and cripple, kill as many Russians as possible for who knows how long. And they're really showing their real aim in the fact that they're not taking action right now to end this conflict.
Now, it might not surprise you since you just mentioned it, but Hillary Clinton is indeed back on the war wagon. Watch.
If you care about freedom, if you care about democracy, if you care about the rights of individuals, if you care about our future, even though it's a war that is happening far away, it is a war that will affect what kind of...
Why is she saying this all with a smile on her face? She's like... She's got this cheesy grin on her face while she's saying all of this. And what is she even talking about? Like, she's, again, you know, I've never heard that, you know, of us doing anything like this ever. So, you know, it's all about democracy. Democracy. We've never gone in and bombed another country into oblivion and left them just a rotting hulk with nothing, you know, it left them worse off than they were before we invaded. Anyways.
World we're going to live in. The Ukrainians are really, and I would argue, fighting for all of us.
Tulsi, so they're fighting for Americans in Ukraine. What?
Yeah, that is seriously cringeworthy. Seriously cringeworthy.
What?
You know, people like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, they all use this flowery language about how, you know, we've got to take a stand and pay the price. The American people need to pay, you know, so much more for gas, so much more for food, make those decisions between filling their gas tank and buying groceries because freedom? The question that we should all be asking them is, okay, tell us how Russia somehow has the power to take away our freedom of speech here in America. Tell us.
Whistleblower who was given asylum nearly 2 years ago in Russia.
Let me ask you, I'm sure you must have, as an ex-KGB agent, you must have hated what Snowden did with every fiber of your being.
No, not at all. Snowden is not a traitor. He didn't betray the interest of his country, nor did he transfer any information to any other country, which would have been pernicious to his own country or to his own people. The only thing Snowden does, he does publicly.
Did you agree with what he did?
No.
Did you think the National Security Agency had gone too far in its eavesdropping?
Yes, certainly. In that matter, Snowden was right. But you asked me, and I gave you a direct answer. I think he shouldn't have done it. If he didn't like anything at his work, he should have simply resigned. But he went further. That's his right. But since you are asking whether it's right or wrong, I think it's wrong.
So he's saying that he should not have whistleblown, and he should have resigned in principle, on the principle, like Mr. Putin did when he resigned from the KGB.
Yes, I think so. I had not given it thought, but I think yes. I resigned because I didn't agree with the actions undertaken by the government.
Okay, so you do agree that the NSA went too far?
Yes.
And how do you feel about Russian intelligence activities in their surveillance?
I think they're working quite well. Our intelligence services always conform to the law. That's the first thing. And secondly, trying to spy on your allies. If you really consider them allies and not vassals, is just indecent, because it undermines trust. And it means that in the end it deals damage to your own national security.
Certainly a curious and relevant graph from Wall Street Journal. Contributions by individuals of more than $50,000 to the Clinton Foundation between 1999 and 2014 by nationality of donor. And who tops the list? Ukraine. Then England, Saudi Arabia, Germany, Ireland, India, Canada, Argentina, etc., etc. Ukraine. That's interesting. What matters most from a COVID-19 perspective is that, functionally speaking, the executive branch, apparently with congressional consent, transferred $13.6 billion US. Well, that would certainly buy a lot of fertilizer and diesel for US farmers, to support what appears to me to be a lost cause in Ukraine. Back to local DC kabuki. In their infinite wisdom, the administration and their congressional uniparty allies have boxed themselves in with this little trick, as apparently this was some sort of reappropriation and transfer of COVID-19 funds consequent to the most recent propaganda pivot from COVID-19 to the crisis in Ukraine. But the news cycle moves faster than a DC bureaucrat can say congressional earmark, and with that head-spinning pivot back to suddenly needing to promote nonstop fear porn, there is a new pressing need to fill the COVID-19 pandemic cookie jar again. No longer the new normal, which was so yesterday. We have the next normal, thanks to UPenn, the same organization that brought us Doctors Paul Offit and Katie Carico, Drew Weissman, pseudoridine invention of mRNA vaccines. I guess that is what you would get when you hire contract ghostwriters using lowest price technically acceptable source selection processes. In any case, having spent the allotted COVID-19 money on foreign adventures in the Ukraine, the Uniparty now needs to allocate and spend more of your money on COVID-19 goodies. How much you ask? Remember that the reallocation to Ukraine was 13.6 billion US. Well, never let a good crisis go to waste, as they say. UPenn estimates that overhauling U.S. public health and preparedness could take $100 billion in the first year, $20 billion to $30 billion in the following 2 years, and $10 billion to $15 billion annually thereafter. Let me guess just who will be at the front of that tasty food line, hat in hand. The Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security better up their game or get left behind. Take your pick. Mr. Greenwald is rapidly becoming a constitutional conservative, as am I, just for the record. And now it is looking and sounding a lot like Russia may have had a valid point vis-a-vis its own national security interests and concerns regarding the gradual development of a NATO-aligned state along the Russian border. If you believe the recent statements by Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, if the Ukraine gives up NATO alliance, U.S. client state aspirations, then there is a deal to be made to end the war. Russia has revealed the outline of a possible peace deal that would put an end to the hostilities in Ukraine. We already covered that, so he just goes on to outline that. Of course, this progress towards becoming a neutral, demilitarized state is not consistent with the hyperbole and propaganda being pushed by Vladimir Zelensky and colleagues, who may be the ones with the most to lose in this week's episode of International Kabuki Theater, Dancing with the Stars. I nominate Newsmax anchor person Sean Spicer as lead announcer for this edition. As an aside, this is certainly a curious and relevant graph. It's from Wall Street Journal. Contributions by individuals of more than $50,000 to the Clinton Foundation between 1999 and 2014 by nationality of donor. And who tops the list? Ukraine. Then England, Saudi Arabia, Germany, Ireland, India, Canada, Argentina, etc., etc. How much you ask? Remember that the reallocation to Ukraine was 13.6 billion US. Well, never let a good crisis go to waste, as they say. UPenn estimates that overhauling U.S. public health and preparedness could take $100 billion in the first year.
That the Biden administration has done has helped to make this situation better, has helped to de-escalate this situation, which is why the only conclusion that I can draw about why they have been completely silent and not engaging at all on this window of opportunity that President Zelensky opened last night is that what is happening before our eyes right now is exactly what they want to see continue. Why is that? Because it's good for the military-industrial complex. It makes these politicians look tough, and really, you know, it allows them to have this proxy war.
She's just saying what's already common knowledge. I mean, if you don't, and it's been not common knowledge for decades, right? So she's not saying anything that's like, whoa, that is really controversial. Anyways. But apparently it is controversial. Apparently you can't say this stuff. You know, now, I mean, you know, I guess some parts of the mainstream media are just were born yesterday.
Efforts to protect the area have been complicated by an armed conflict that has displaced hundreds of thousands of people and pushed both refugees and armed combatants deeper into the area's forest inside the national park. The conflict, as they keep calling it, compounds existing conservation challenges, including population pressure, land clearing and conversion, demand for bushmeat, can you say chimpanzee in the stew pot, and weak law enforcement. There you go. So that's what the national parks inside the rainforest in Cameroon look like. Alright guys, there is so much here. I'm just going to briefly touch on some of these. Here's this article. I read a whole book about these little guys, these tree kangaroos in New Guinea, about how screwed they are. Looking at this new road going through, I guess, the last home to the critically endangered 10-kyle tree kangaroo. Yes. Yes, those tree kangaroos. I'm glad there's no tree kangaroos in those trees I was cutting down yesterday, almost killing me. Okay, here we go. This is Manga Bay on Bright Green Lies. Did you realize that climate positive high-tech metals are polluting our planet? Yes. Green energy technology growth, especially wind, solar, hydropower, and electric vehicles, is crucial. Yes, if the world is to meet the Paris Climate Agreement goals. Yes, but these green solutions rely on technology critical elements whose production and disposal can be environmentally harmful. Yes, mining and processing of all of these, save the planet from fossil fuels materials. Mining and processing requires huge amounts of energy. Mines use gigantic quantities of fresh water, can drive large-scale land use change, and pollute the air, soil, and water, threatening biodiversity. And then, of course, they also become pollutants themselves when they are disposed as waste. Yes, we know relatively little about what happens to them after manufacture and disposal. Yep. Save the planet from fossil fuels. I love these Amazon Indians wielding drones and cell phones to stop the planet eaters. Did you realize that elephants are far better off in the forest than in a zoo? Never thought of that before. But we just heard about those Amazon Indians using drones and cell phones. I like these guys better. In Brazil, indigenous Kapor take their territory's defense into their own hands, which is exactly what the planet eaters want them to do. Yes. I guess it's Kapor people have taken the defense of their land into their own hands following years of neglect and corruption. They have created a self-defense force to take logging sites and access roads from illegal loggers. All right, so far they have burned 105 logging trucks and closed 14 access roads. But the illegal loggers, you know, whose trucks they're burning down, but the illegal loggers who are part of criminal organizations linked to local politicians have reacted with violence, resulting in attacks on villages and the murder of 2 of these guys. And I've been saying all along that is exactly what the Planet Eaters want, is for these Indians to put a, you know, a bow and arrow through one of them.
You know, it kind of, you know, enjoy the normalcy is all I have to say. And maybe don't live with a cloud over your head, because you can do all the prepping that you can, but you really don't know how it's going to go. When things go down, you don't know how it's going to go. And you don't know if you're going to walk out in the street and get hit by a bus tomorrow. So don't spend your life in fear. But, however, that being said, maybe take some, you know, take a few precautions. You know, here's, I mean, this is just data. This is a somewhat graphically pleasing representation of the data of our gradually warming world. This is you know, temperatures over time. So, you know, deep red meaning danger, danger. Where do you think we're going? It looks like, golly, it looks like we're going somewhere. I wonder where we're going. Also, climate change is a hoax, but, you know, don't worry about that either.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, Ranking Member Norman, and Mr. Gibbs. I'm a 44-year resident of Idaho. For 38 years, I lived in a rural county where my nearest neighbor was a national forest. I've been an advocate for the Northern Rockies Ecosystem Protection Act for 32 years because it was bold and visionary in protecting species and habitat on a large scale. Later, I learned that a forest also stores carbon, which is what we need to solve the climate crisis and address fires. So NAREPA is also a climate solution. Coal, oil, and gas get a lot of attention, but logging is also a huge emitter of carbon. And taxpayers have been subsidizing clear cutting in our national forests for under multiple presidents from both parties for decades. It's institutional. The Forest Service loses nearly $2 billion a year on timber sales. Yet they continue to facilitate felling mature trees under the guise of Orwellian euphemisms: thinning, fuel reduction, salvage, management, and the ever-popular restoration, and I learned a new one today, fuel breaks. In the United States, annual emissions from logging are comparable to the amount emitted from coal. And most commercial logging is now mechanized. So it's not about jobs, because a single operator of heavy equipment called a feller buncher can saw through a living tree, strip the branches, and set the former tree on a pile of logs in little more than the time it took me just to tell you this. Note the size of the big trees and the trees in Dr. De La Sala's slide. They are not thinning. Before the infrastructure law was enacted, more than 200 independent scientists, wrote a letter asking House committee chairs to remove the logging provisions from that law. Their data led them to write that thinning can often increase fire intensity, while protected forests are more likely to lower the intensity should a fire occur. When humans manage a forest, they often clear cut, leaving the unprofitable parts to dry out. Clear cuts are tinder boxes. You can see that on the slide. Logging emits 8 times more CO2 per acre than the combination of wildfire and insects combined. Forest degradation accelerates climate change. Yes, wildfires are getting worse, not because we have too many trees, but because of extreme climate-driven weather events accelerated by removal of trees. Trees store carbon. Independent scientists not funded by the Forest Service or a company that profits from logging tell us that the most effective way to protect homes is to harden them with fire-resistant materials and create defensible space. When other scientists promote removing trees beyond 100 feet from a home or a community, which logging companies do, the headline becomes, "Scientists disagree." This confuses the public. Let me clear up the confusion. When a scientist tells you that the solution is to remove even more trees from our national forests, look for who is paying that scientist. I'm asking Congress to do 4 things. Pass NREPA, pass a law requiring the Forest Service to incentivize preservation over timber sales, repeal the logging provisions in the infrastructure law, allocate some of that money to help people harden homes, and use the rest to help American families.
How the largest global meat and dairy companies evade climate scrutiny. So that, of course, they don't, I'm not going to subscribe, fool. All the rules around climate change are made to evade and avoid any real action on climate change. So I think many people understand this. Some people don't understand this. But if you are unclear on the concept, all the people saying, we're going to do something about climate change and we're going to make the rules and we're going to make sure that we don't destroy the planet while we're destroying the planet is basically what they're trying to say. And they're really just kind of intent on continuing to destroy the planet. Half of meat and dairy companies aren't even measuring their impact on climate change. So of course, I'm not going to read this whole thing. I was just kind of reading it for the headline. 37% of global greenhouse gas emissions can be traced to the global food system, the majority from meat and dairy, pointing towards policy solutions that very much put the bullseye on the meat producers paying the NCBA's bills. One recent study, for instance, found that high-income countries, especially the US, France, Australia, and Germany, could cut their agriculture emissions by 2/3 through diet change alone, largely by reducing meat consumption. And a lot, I mean, I don't like to do the silver bullet things, or like, oh, if we just stopped eating meat and dairy, we would save the planet. I mean, that's kind of semi-ridiculous, just as a standalone statement. But it is part of the problem, and if you reduce your meat consumption and/or those industries, their footprint in the emissions game is quite large. And I know, some people on some part of the spectrum will say, oh, they want you to stop eating meat. And this is just all this. Klaus Schwab wants you to stop eating meat, which is also a profoundly ridiculous thing to think or say, but whatever. Because it's true. It's true. And what's also true that I think everybody on all political spectrums can understand is that big ag, big oil, big farm, just big, is responsible for a lot of damage. You know, big fill in the blank, responsible for a lot of damage. It's weird to me when people get selective about it. Well, big oil is bad, but big pharma, you know, they're okay. Big pharma's bad, but big ag, they're okay. You know, I like the selectiveness of the people on certain sides of certain issues, but it happens. It happens. I'm going to move on. TCR coming with the heat. Scorched earth policy playing out in real time as the price of a gallon of gas, as all the car-loving masses are concerned with. Right. And here we have this pretty intense temperature anomaly happening in the Arctic. No, nobody's making up these graphs. No, this isn't like fake news. Oh, this isn't like, is HARP sending a death ray to the Arctic so that they can tell you that climate change is real? Klaus Schwab just wants to tell you that it's, you know, real so he can depopulate agenda. I know that I'm sounding sarcastic when I do that. I don't doubt that Klaus Schwab and those people have evil intentions. I don't doubt it whatsoever, and I totally understand it. But I'm just saying, you can't apply that to things that don't apply. You can't apply that to things. You can't apply it to everything. But this is absolutely happening, and this is concerning. This should be concerning.
And Taiwan is sending more aid for Ukraine, but China isn't happy as Beijing officials slammed the island for what they called taking advantage of the difficulties of others. Peter's first phone call since the invasion started. How well did it go, according to analysts? NTD's Don Ma brings us more.
In the call, Biden cautioned that there will be ramifications if China provides material support to Russia. A political analyst says the call amounts to a direct warning from the U.S. to China.
Biden was essentially warning Xi Jinping directly that if Xi Jinping were to support Putin in a more substantial manner, that there would be consequences. Those consequences were fairly unspecified, but I think we can expect secondary economic sanctions on China.
Beijing says that in the call, Xi told Biden that the war should end as soon as possible and that the Ukraine crisis is not something that China wants to see. Xi added that the U.S. and China should shoulder international responsibilities and work for world peace. But Core believes Xi's words may not be all that truthful.
I don't think Xi Jinping is sincere in wanting an end to the war. He's speaking through state media rather than directly to the world public. He's saying platitudes, basically, when what we really need is a straight-up denunciation of Putin and his bloody invasion.
Frank Gaffney of the Center for Security Policy also agrees that Xi's words may not be sincere, adding that trying to get Xi to distance himself from Putin could be futile.
China, that they want to be seen as responsible partners and, working to end this strife and advance world peace and all that. This is a lie. What Communist China is interested in doing is dominating the Eurasian landmass. And their partnership with Putin to that end is absolutely of paramount importance.
The phone call between Biden and Xi was around 2 hours long. It's yet to be seen whether the call will lead to significant progress in the Ukraine conflict. Don Ma, NTD News.
We are in the process of destroying this planet.
You are? You're in the process. It was Earth Day recently, a time for us all to reflect on the ecology and whether ecological disaster and decline is being caused by individuals like us or great big powerful corporations that frequently use greenwashing messages around ecology in order to promote their interests. So who is to blame for climate change, global meltdown, the problems the world's facing? Is it you or is it giant corporations?
As environmentally conscious practices become more and more commonplace, corporations are helping us make better decisions.
Good old corporations, we can always rely on them to help us make better decisions. The priority of corporations has always been better decisions for the environment. In fact, if you stack up what's best for the consumer and the environment here and what's best for the corporations here, it's only ever going to go one way, and I don't think any of us doubt what way that is.
By giving us eco-friendly options. Or are they? Believe it or not, it's much harder to tell the difference now between a product that's actually all green from one that is simply been greenwashed.
What we mean by greenwash is the reality that the corporation or company present versus the actual reality, what they actually do. Often what happens is they do one or two things that they heavily promote and sort of smash into your face to distract you from other activity that, you know, usually is greatly at odds with the messaging that we're receiving. And also I think the sort of broader ideological presentation that you are individually responsible. I sit there doing all that recycling in my heart of hearts thinking, is there any point in me rinsing out this jar of Dolmio? Is there? Is that what's required? I'll get the old Dolmio out, I've put it in the correct bin. Pledges, neutral, 2030, they've all got their sights set on our good old 2030, don't they? It's because it's like, oh, it can't be too soon, but it's got to sound, it can't sound stupidly far off. Microsoft has partnered with, right, if you're looking to sort out carbon neutrality, you've got to go with people who know the business inside out. That's why Microsoft has partnered with oil giants Chevron and Schlumberger, world's largest oil field service provider, to accelerate oil field development and extraction of fossil fuels. That would, hold on a minute, that's not going to help. This would increase carbon emissions. Oh, this kind of partnership is not new to the company. Microsoft has aggressively courted the oil industry, forming partnerships with ExxonMobil and hosting exhibitions like Empowering Oil and Gas with AI at industry conferences. I just find that a bit offensive, don't you? Like doing all that and that lovely piano that we were all into. That is why we're going to be carbon neutral by 8:30. Well, that seems soon. Oh, sorry, 2030. And now it's our good friends at Chevron and Exxon. You can't do that. We're doing that at 2030 also.
Not just across our direct emissions, but across our supply chain too.
It's like for children, like just showing us a bunch of pictures of trees. Look, there's some trees, I'll stand in front of some trees. It's like taking the piss a bit, isn't it?
We must take responsibility to address the carbon footprint of our own technology and company, but we will also go beyond that.
Well, you won't, will you? Because actually it's worse what you're doing. Don't pretend you're actually going beyond it. We're going beyond it, but backwards beyond it. Back beyond.
By 2050, we will remove from the environment all of the carbon we have emitted directly or by electrical consumptions since our company's founding.
Always done, maximizing the efficiency of Microsoft. There'll never be something they do like, well, Jeff Bezos, I've given away all this money. How much money you got now? More than ever. Well, how is that giving away money?
Jeff Bezos out with his next big idea, announcing a multi-billion-dollar effort to fight climate change, calling it the Bezos Earth Fund.
In 2019, Amazon co-founded the Climate Pledge, FEW, to be net zero by 2040, aiming for 100% renewable power by 2025, making half of its deliveries carbon neutral by 2030. In 2020, Bezos announced via Instagram 10 billion in grants to kickstart the Bezos Earth Fund. Well, that all sounds brilliant, doesn't it? You hear that? 10 billion, carbon neutral, 2030. It's all going to be fine. Let's have a look at some other information that's equally true and see what you think is going to have the biggest impact on the planet. Jeff Bezos is infamously misleading when it comes to donating to charitable causes, touting big sums while only providing a fraction. Amazon has a poor record on environmental issues. No, it doesn't. I just told you, Earth Fund has poor record on environmental issues, employee rights and taxes, and their business model relies on overconsumption.
We are in the process of destroying this planet.
You are? You're in the process. Who's we? I'm trying my best. I'm washing out my Dole Mio jars. It's you. You're in the process of destroying this planet with these great vast hangars filled with the world's poor, putting stuff into cardboard. When it's like responsibility, it's we. When it's who's getting the bonuses, it's I.
We have to work together to meet these goals. It has to be done that way.
Late last year, Bezos co-founded the Climate Pledge for businesses.
What's the iconography of this? These blankets being pulled down to reveal some stuff. Like, this is Amazon, the kind of resources they've got. And it's like something happening at a church fete. And